I'm hi, I'm Liat Bear, and I am building Eve Creative, which is a creative marketing agency that markets to women in a way that is representative of them and respectful of who women are and what they want, how they want to bring themselves and what products they want. The reason Nathalie asked me to speak about cold calling is because when I started my copywriting business, I started it with cold calling. I really didn't know what to do, and I made a list, and I'll go into more detail later. And I just started calling companies. And my first 10 to 15 clients, at least, I built from cold calling, and I work with very, very big companies. And cold calling has brought me literally hundreds of thousands of shekels. So it's definitely something that is worth doing, and we're going to talk about that a little more. Okay, so what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about what cold calling is, why it's so powerful, why you should be cold calling, and then we're going to go into the 10 skills you need to become a cold caller. Okay, so the first thing, what is cold calling? We spoke a little bit about that. I don't see cold calling as telemarketing. Telemarketing to me is the person who's calling me at 6 o'clock in the evening and is disrupting dinner time and wants to sell me a bunch of knives, or things like that. Or the person who I've hung up on 8 times and will continue to call me. So that is how I see telemarketing. Cold calling I see is completely different, because when I called companies, I really called them because I was offering something that they need. If they didn't need it, I stopped calling them. It's very simple. Like, is this something that you can possibly need? Yes, not right now. Or is this something you need? No, we do not call again. Like, that's it. So cold calling is like we said before, it's calling somebody who you don't know, you've never previously spoken with them, and now you're calling them because you want to interest them in a service. Vera said, get your foot in the door. That's absolutely what it is. Okay, so why is cold calling so powerful? Cold calling is really, really powerful because 1, it builds relationships, 2, it builds trust, and 3, nobody's doing it. I'm going to tell you a story now, and this is the story about how I really started my business. I had made a list of companies that I want to work with. One of those companies is Sano. For anybody who lives in Israel, you've probably heard of this Sano company because they sell cleaning products, they sell insect repellents, they sell so many things that most of us who live in Israel have at least one product in their house that is a Sano product. And I really, really wanted to work with them. And I called them, and the first time I called them, they said, no, we're not interested. And I asked them, well, can I call you back again in 3 months? They said, sure. Called them back again in 3 months. And they said, not so relevant. And I asked them, can I call you back in 6 months? She's like, you want to call in 6 months? Call in 6 months. Called them back in 6 months. Anyways, this went on for about 2.5, 3 years, something like that. When I would call them, I'd call them every 3 months or 6 months, depending on what we spoke about. And then about a couple of months after I spoke to them, maybe it was half a year, I don't remember, they called me out of the blue one day. And they said to me, hi, remember you called us, we've been in touch. We have something that we want to try working with you. So I was super excited and I said, sure. And we did a first project and they loved it. And then they sent me more projects and more projects and more projects. And before I knew, 1 month had gone by and I had like a bunch of different projects that I did with them. After about a month, they call me up. They're like, look, the brand manager, that was like the marketing team before. Now it was like the brand. It was like one level up. They said, he wants to meet with you. So I went in and I was very, very excited to go meet with Sano. And this was super exciting. I was a little bit nervous, and my husband said to me, "Don't worry, nobody calls you for a meeting when they're about to fire you." So I went super, super excited, nervous, not sure what they're going to say. And I walk into this brand manager's office, and he looks at me and he goes, "How did this happen?" And the marketing manager who I was working with goes, "She called us for 3 years." And so he looks at me, he smiles, and he goes, "Listen to this, because these words are the words I will never forget in my life. You wanted to work with us. Now we want to work with you." And that was like I knew I had won them over, and I had a retainer with them for a while after that. And and I still work with them, and it's whatever. It's been quite a trip. And again, that's 3 years of work. So the reason I was able to do that is because I was able to build a relationship. I was able to build trust, and because nobody else is doing it. I've said this in the past, and you may have heard me say it. People prefer to eat cockroaches than to make cold calls. And because nobody's doing it, I was able to forge this relationship with Sano, because had a bunch of other copywriters been cold calling them, I might have not been the first on their list. I might have not been on their list at all. So the fact that nobody wants to do it is like a huge, huge plus. So yeah, now we can move on. Now, cold calling is not necessarily just for sales. I used it for sales. It's how I built my business, but it's not the only thing you can do it for. And Melissa mentioned it before. You can do collaborations. It can be campaigns. It can be guest blogging. It can be guest podcasting. It could be partnerships. It could be whatever it is. So don't dismiss it, because it's something that has a crazy amount of potential in growing your business. And also, there's also the issue of market research. If there's somebody that you want to speak to, if there's somebody that you think that can offer you, advice or insights, or you want them to answer a survey, then you can pick up the phone and you can call and you can develop a relationship. And also, have the foresight. Let's say if you know that you have a certain product that you're going to launch whenever, start building that relationship ahead of time, so that by the time you need that relationship, you'll already have it. Okay, so now that we've covered all of this, we can now go into the 10 skills that you actually need for cold calling. So the first one is a positive mindset. And the reason this is really important is also self-explanatory, but also here, I'll tell you the story of where I came from. I was obviously not born a copywriter, but I also never studied copywriting formally. In university, I studied Tanakh in Jewish philosophy. I had worked in nonprofit organizations. The furthest thing from things I knew about was actually copywriting. So how did I come to be a copywriter? My husband came home one day from work, and he brought 2 different PowerPoint presentations from people who had to pitch something. And they knew that I knew English, and they said, "Have your wife review our presentation and fix the English." I looked at the presentations. I didn't think they were written very well, as an understatement. I completely rewrote them. And I said to my husband, "Look, send this to them. And if they hate it, then no worries. I'll go back, I'll fix the Hebrew, I'll fix the English, and I'll just send what they sent. But let's take a chance, because they might like this." So I sent it to them, and both of them loved it. And then I said to my husband, I think this is what I want to do. I was working at nonprofits. I was looking for, something else that I was going to be passionate about. And I really, really loved writing these presentations. And I said to my husband, this is what I'm going to do. And despite being married to really the most wonderful man in the world, in one of his less stellar moments, he said to me like this with his finger, nobody will pay you to write. And at that moment, I wanted to be like, what? I'm going to prove you wrong. But I didn't have the guts to do that because I didn't know that I was going to succeed. And I said, okay, I don't know if it's going to work. I don't know if it's not going to work. You might be right. You might be wrong, but I am going to try. And once I took this thing on that I was going to try, in my head, it wasn't try. It was, I knew that I had to succeed. Like if my husband could be so sure that I was going to fail, then it was going to be so clear that I was going to succeed. And what I did was I created a list of 1,200 companies that I wanted to work with, dream companies that I had in my mind that I wanted to work with, because I just wanted to go down the list one by one, calling, and that's what I did. And that's how I started. And the reason that I could keep going is because I had this positive mindset from the beginning. I was going to succeed and it wouldn't matter. It didn't matter how many no's I was going to get. So these are the things to remember. You're here to serve. Like when you come to somebody, it's about you providing something that is of value. That's what you're giving over. You're providing value to somebody else. You want to share that value, and that's why you're making the call. Another thing to keep in mind is you're responsible for your own success. In other words, don't make 100 calls, be like, this didn't work, and give up. It's about you understanding that at some point you will succeed. And those elements of a positive mindset are required prerequisites for cold calling success. Number 2, rejection. It's not about you. This is where a lot of people have issues because the rejection, they have a hard time with hearing no, with hearing not interested, with hearing, people being wishy-washy about what they need. So what I needed to keep in my mind and help me get through, and what I hope you'll take from this, that rejection, 1, it's not about you. 2, people, they care about their own needs. So if you're offering something that is of value, they will take that to heart. And just like Sano, for many, many years, even for those 2 years, those many, many times that I spoke to them, it was a no. They weren't interested. They didn't say no that they didn't need it at all, but they said no in the sense that we don't need this right now. And that's why I kept going, because there was still some sort of interest. And so long as there's an interest, there's still a chance that people are still going to call you back. And that's what happened with Sano. They cared about their own needs, right? I just happened to deliver. I happened to make it easier for them. Nobody has time to start looking for people. When you're there in your lap, you're showing up, then you enable them when they are ready to just pick up the phone. You're making their life easier, essentially, is what is happening. Another reason you shouldn't care about rejection is because by the time they hang up, they totally forgot you called. You're not on their mind anymore. They're on to the next thing already. So don't hold that rejection. Don't take it personally. It's really not about you. Making rejection into a game. This I actually heard on a podcast I listened to. I can't tell you what podcast because I don't remember, but really, if you make a game out of it and you're like, okay, how many no's can I get in a day? Can I get 20 straight no's? If you get 20 straight no's, you know that the next day you're going to get a yes. That's number 1. And also it makes it fun. Oh, let's see, am I really going to get so many no's today? Are people in a no mood today? like helps clear your mind of any worry that rejection is about you because you've made it into a game. Next, number 3, prospecting. Now, this is really important because when I started, I didn't do this. When I started, the only thing I cared about was that these companies were gonna be big companies, because that's who I wanted to work with. I didn't know who my niche was. I started from like really scratch. In fact, I didn't even have a portfolio. And this is why anybody who's cold calling, anybody here is already going to be much more successful than I was, much, much faster, because I started with nothing. When people asked for my portfolio, I would send them a few pieces of work that I totally made up. I made up the companies, I made up the products, everything was made up. I got a graphic designer and she made it look all pretty, but it was like really totally made up. I had not one company who could come vouch for me and say, oh yeah, she's great, you know, she's a great copywriter. I didn't have that. So I started from scratch, and that's why it took so long. It will take less time when you already have a track record. Now, prospecting is important because once you identify the people or the companies who are going to be interested in working with you, you can provide them with some sort of value. You connect with them on a value level. You connect with them in what you can provide for them. Then things become a lot clearer to you, because only those types of companies are going to be on your list. And you're going to know the best way to bring yourself forward, because you're going to present yourself in a way that's going to make it very clear of why they would want to work with you. I suggest that for prospecting, you identify your potential customers or partners, and you create the longest list that you can. In other words, spend like a few hours, even like, I don't know, half an hour once a week, even just adding more companies to your list so that you never run out of them, because prospecting afterwards can take more time. So if you're constantly doing it, you'll never run out of names. And if you're constantly doing it, you'll constantly be generating whatever it is, more sales, more partnerships, whatever it is you want to generate. Another thing with prospecting is today it's really easy with social media to do research and to find the person that you need to speak to. So let's say you want a certain person at a company. It's easy to find people on LinkedIn who are the people that work in a certain company. Are you connected to them in any way? Do you have friends that are connected to them in any way? You could really like cross-reference from, you know, different social media platforms, and that can help you do some serious prospecting, which can help you take it already start at a good level, because you're reaching out to relevant companies. Understand your irresistible offer. So this is really, really important, because when you come to a person, is like what we said before, it's really important that you know what it is you're offering. And when you come with an offer that's very, very clear, it's much easier for a company to say yes or no. Now, what's important to remember is that the no's are not bad, because what's much worse is when a company wastes your time and says, oh, sure, call again. But at some point you recognize that it's not a company that's going to need you. Now, this happened to me when I made calls to a company and they kept saying, yeah, whatever. And the reason I stopped calling them is because I realized at some point I don't know why I didn't do this earlier, that they didn't even have an English website. So if a company doesn't have an English website, that to me indicated that they didn't really have a English speaking audience. And if they don't have an English speaking audience, there was no reason for me to be in touch with them in the first place. So it would have been much more useful for them to say no. So this is why it's really, really important you understand what your irresistible offer is, that your irresistible offer is relevant to them. That goes back to the prospecting, that you understand their pain points, like make it super, super relevant for them, how you can connect what your offer is to what they need. At some point, they may talk about their concerns, why they think it's not going to work. And it's your job to take those concerns, show them that you're listening, and turn them around in like talking about them, address them, speak to their concerns, and answer them by making your value very, very clear. And of course, addressing those concerns. So yeah, prepare. This is really important. There's a lot of work that goes into the backstory of cold calling. And this is what I was saying earlier. I had made a list of 1,200 prospects. Yes, it's excessive. Yes, it's kind of crazy. Yes, the reason I probably did 1,200 is because I wanted to maybe avoid cold calling for as long as I possibly could. I don't know, I'm just thinking about that now, because like, who makes a list of 1,200 companies? I mean, it took me years to get to like 800. So I don't know, but yeah, prepare that list of prospects, know who you're reaching out to. If you have names, that's always better. Learn. That's something that's not here. Learn from what you're saying. Prepare the script. Know what you're going to say to the person that you're going to speak to. So it could be, for me, it was like, hi, Liat. Hi, I'm Liat. I'm a copywriter. And I wanted to know if you need any help with your marketing assets. I can help you prepare your marketing assets in English. And I would do this in Hebrew. And because I had a script, it made things really, really clear. At some point, I learned that I could get through those secretaries. They're like gatekeepers. So sometimes it's really, really hard to get through the secretaries. But I learned that when I use the word copywriterit and not right, a copywriter and not a content writer, then they didn't know what a copywriter was. So they were scared that they were going to miss out on something, and they would be like, oh, we'll just pass you on to the marketing department. So that just got me right through. So sometimes you can like find the keys, you know, to getting through the gatekeeper to get to the next step. And you can try different things. You know, when you have a long list of prospects, you're not worried about, oh no, I'm going to ruin this prospect. There's always the next one. So try new things and learn from them and move forward with that. So practice makes perfect. Just keep doing it. And the more you do it, the more prepared you will be. And the easier it will be to pick up the phone and make those calls. People become familiar with you. When I used to call people, they like recognize my voice. Oh, it's you again, you know, like, so yeah, just keep doing it and don't stop. Sometimes it's very, very easy to stop because you get comfortable. The projects are coming in, the partnerships are working. If you become complacent though, like your muscle atrophies. So just keep going, prepare for it and keep going. Organization. So among the things that you prepare, you also have to keep things organized. Now, my desk is far from organized. Anybody who knows me would not say that I am an organized person. Somehow I was able to, it's funny because it wasn't even an effort. It was like all very clear how organized I needed to be. I started off with an Excel spreadsheet. I put all those 1,200 names was in every line was a different company. And I went across, and each of the columns was what went on in the conversation. Today, I'm beginning to use a CRM. I'm working with Elisa on that. So yeah, it doesn't matter what form you use, whether you use an Excel spreadsheet or whether you use a CRM, as long as you're working with a system that works for you. It needs to work for you. You need to be able to work your own system. Every piece of information is important. Take notes, especially of names and dates. So yeah, know who you're speaking to. When you are able to pick up the phone and say, I want to speak to X, and you are addressing X by their name, it's important. When you can tell that person, oh, last time we spoke, you were on Khufshat Leida, you were on maternity leave. Last time we spoke, you were about to give birth. You knew to call, 5 months later. So Mazal Tov, did you have a baby boy or a baby girl? You already have like a point of opening to begin that conversation, and people actually appreciate that you remember. They're not like, oh, she wrote it down. Like they take you from a place that you remembered and you care, and that's a part of building trust, is the fact that your notes are so organized. Another thing is to pay attention to hints. There are a lot of hints that people drop, like, oh, listen, I can't talk to you right now because we're in the middle of getting together we're launching something in a few months. And then after that, we're going to be putting together a website. And then like my ears would be like, oh, website. Okay. I'm like, okay, so when should I be in touch with you again? Before you do your website, I may be able to help you with that, whatever. And then that gives you another point that you can come in where what you're offering is a lot more relevant. Okay, persistence. So this is super important. I think the fact that, the story with Sano is like proves how important persistence is. Another story that I had with a client, it didn't take 3 years, it took about 9 months. But he told me, you can call every month you can call. And I called every single month for 9 months. And then he called me and he said to me, listen, I really want to work with you. And that was because I was persistent. Why would he want to work with me? He had no idea. Could I produce good work? Could I not produce good work? But he was sure that I could produce good work, because if I was so persistent, I clearly had something worth selling. So don't let up. You're building trust. Keep going, even with rejection. Like the rejection is not important. The fact that they're telling you to call back in another month, that gives you hope. The fact that they're giving you permission to call back in another month or 3 months or 6 months, that keeps you going. And that should say, okay, great, I still have an opening here. And even if the rewards are not quick, they're not always quick. Sometimes they're not quick, but I'll tell you one thing. Working with Sano completely changed my business. Yes, it brought in, a good amount of money, but beyond that, every single time I spoke to another client and I could send them examples of my work, or I could tell them I work with Sano, to that other person, that meant, oh, you're good enough for Sano, you're definitely good enough for me, because there are very few businesses that are as big as Sano. So having superstars like these super big companies on your like list of clients or partnerships or people you work with, or like a big name podcast or whatever, is super, super helpful. People pay attention to those names. And when you're saying it from a place that you've worked with them, you've spoken to them, you have a relationship with them, you're not just name dropping. And people know to recognize when a person is just name dropping or whether they have a real and deep relationship with a company, because those people also later refer you to other companies. So if you don't have any big names on your, or partnerships or whatever, I really, really recommend it, because it just changes the way people see you. Okay, keep your word. So this goes back, that company that I was, who told me to call back every month. I don't think he thought for a second that I was actually going to call back every month. Like, I don't think he thought I was going to pick up the phone. He thought he told me, oh, you can just email me. I was like, I'm going to email him? Like, does that make sense for me to do? I'm going to email him. I'm going to pick up the phone and I'm going to speak to him and I'm going to talk to him and we're going to have a relationship and it's going to develop into business. That was the mindset, right? That's the positive mindset. And you have to understand, all these steps that I'm saying, they sound like different steps, but they're all a part of the same thing that you're doing. And when you put all of these things together, it's so insanely powerful. So keep your word, follow up when you say you will, because the trust you build here will translate into other areas. And what I mean by that is that when you keep your word, when you say you're going to call back and you do, people think to themselves, oh, you followed up with me on something that's not so important. It's a phone call. If like I wasn't waiting around for a month or 3 months or 6 months waiting for you, nobody's waiting for you to call. Nobody. But when you call because you said you were going to call then and you remind them, remember I said I was going to call 3 months ago, we spoke, you said I can call back in 3 months. When you show them that you're keeping your word, that means, oh, this is a person I can trust. This is a person who holds, who holds to their word. This is a person who is going to meet deadlines. This is a person who's gonna make the relationship work because they cared enough to keep their word about a phone call. Like that's how it works. That's how deep this is. Patience. Okay, so this is it. Okay, patience is super, super important. I cannot emphasize this enough. I have another story for you. So remember my awesome husband who had not such a stellar moment. So he had one of these, another not so stellar moment. It's funny. He's usually like the best, says the most amazing things, but when he has not stellar moments, they're like doozies. Anyways, so in the first year of me cold calling, it didn't go so fast. I mean, it took me to get to my 50th company. The 50th is when I got my first yes. The 50th is where I got my first job, right? And until that happened, my dear, sweet husband said to me, when are you going to give up and get a job like a real person? Like, or sorry, not like a real person. When are you going to give up and get a real job? And I was just like, maybe soon, not yet. I'm not done yet. I got to keep going. And so you need a crazy amount of patience and go back to mindset that you are going to succeed, because sometimes it takes longer. As I said, it doesn't need to take you as long as it did for me. For me, it took 50 companies, but it took me 50 companies because I had no experience. There was no one to vouch for me. There was nothing I could show for myself except for my, the products that I made up and the companies that I made up. But when you already have a solid business, when you're already working, people know your name, it's going to go a lot faster. It just will. It's just the way it works. But on those slow relationships, when you want it to go faster, you need to keep in mind that slow and steady wins the race. Absolutely. And that success is a numbers game at the end of the day. The more people you call, the more success is likely, the more there is a chance for success. So yeah, patience. And then here we go. Graciousness. Okay, now this is super, super important because I once called a tourist agency, very, very big tourist agency here in Israel. And I actually thought that they would need, work, English, like marketing work in English in order to have their own partnerships with companies abroad or whatever. And I spoke to them maybe once or twice, not more than that. But they called me a year later, and I didn't end up working with them for whatever reason. But one thing that one of the women who called me back said to me, and it's something that stayed with me a long time, is she said to me, "You sounded so nice on the telephone." Like the fact that you just sound like a nice person on the telephone, and even when something doesn't work, you're thanking them for their time, you're polite, you're asking permission to call again, whatever it is, like you're just super nice and kind, because you're with the attitude, nobody owes you anything and you are here to serve them. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. You had a conversation with somebody. Thank you for your time. Thank you so, so much. a little bit of graciousness or a lot of graciousness really, really goes a long, long way. And then that's it. So always do your best. What you plant now, you will harvest later. Thank you. And if I can make just a plug for my newsletter, I have a website called Successful Women of Israel, which I will tie to Eve Creative at some point. I'm still working on the messaging there, but I have a newsletter. And if this interested you, and if you think that whatever, you might be interested, then take a look and sign up. And that is it.